Now, digital transformation is key to driving growth on the continent, and over the past few years, there has been some progress. According to the World Bank's latest report, the number of internet users in Sub-Saharan Africa more than doubled between 2016 and 2021. And Google's MD for Africa, Alex Okosi, says there's more room for growth. Business Day TV's Ndawling Lachela caught up with Alex at the Africa CEO Forum. Here's that conversation.
My highlights has been it hasn't just been business leaders that you've had here, right? So you've had, regulators on ground. We've had startups. We've had literally every single person within the ecosystem that matters, and here and having conversations in terms of how we move the continent forward. And I think that's incredibly powerful. Across the board, there's been numerous discussions around investments, around technology, around how do we create more bandwidth for connectivity. For us at Google, we're of course focused on how do we continue to unlock economic opportunity for Africans. And for us, we're just excited to be here, to be engaged in these conversations. And it's an amazing forum. I think that anyone that cares about the growth of the continent should be here. And what you're seeing with the turnout is that people really care, and CEOs on the continent understand the role that we all have to play collectively to be able to drive Africa's growth.
That brings me to my next question around collaboration, because this is a place where you are saying that it's not just business leaders, we have regulators, we have the public sector as well as startups. I want to touch on collaboration specifically between the private sector and the public sector. I've been having conversations with a number of business leaders here on the ground, and I think they speak with a similar voice, that there is progress, but there's more to be done. Where do you lie, or where does Google lie with that?
Look, I think for us, we're excited about the collaboration that we're seeing from governments. And I think, yes, there's always going to be progress, there's always going to be improvement, but it's a two-way relationship, right, between public and private. And it's really important that we, first of all, understand the fundamental aspirations that everyone has. Government wants, of course, its citizens, its communities to be able to grow. Us as business, we want the same thing, because that's how we drive successful businesses. So the collaboration is happening. If you look at, for instance, at Google, our work is really very much bent on, we want to make sure that we do everything together with government so that we're able to actually really unlock the value across the board. So giving you examples, for instance, we have been working really hard to make sure that we bridge the digital divide. Part of doing that is, of course, connectivity. So we've invested in Equiano, which is our undersea cable. To be able to land Equiano across the 4 countries within Africa that it is collaboration with government in terms of how do we make sure that we frame it the right way. The other thing that's really critical for us is skilling. Again, to unleash this incredible potential that technology has and digital has, and more importantly now AI has, to be able to fast track Africa's growth, it's about making sure that we have skilled people on our continent that are going to be able to really leverage on the power of digital to move forward. So we do a lot of work with government to make sure that we provide sort of certificates. For instance, in South Africa, we do that. We sponsor certificates so that people, whether in the public sector, also in the private sector, that governments see as important in the value chain, are getting the trainings they need to really be able to engage with digital in the right way. So for us, that's really what's critical. And of course, working on the frameworks is also what's important. I get excited that at the AU level, we have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is now in place. Digital trade is a core part of that. That's a really progressive place for all our heads of states to be aligned and understanding that being able to allow digital trade, or at least find a framework for doing so, is critical. Now, our role in the private sector is to work with government to make sure that the frameworks are enabling, and they're not going to, again, stunt the growth because people believe that they're trying to protect. But more importantly, it's important to mitigate the risk, but maximize the opportunity. And that's the role we have to play to really, really be collaborative in what we do.
So then you would say that the policies and the frameworks are accommodating to the private sector and just poise the ground for even more investment.
Look, there's work to be done to make sure that they are accommodating. I think we're still in the beginning phases of it. But what's exciting is that governments are open to understanding how to do it better. I think that you have more progressive governments, of course, that are putting frameworks in place. For instance, AI is such an incredible opportunity for our continent. When you look across the board, there's a white paper by Access Partnerships right now. They published a white paper that says across Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, and Kenya, just over the next 3 years, it can unleash over $136 billion of economic value, what AI can do. Now, to be able to do that, it becomes really important that we have great AI frameworks, that governments understand the risk, and that we have a risk-based proportional frameworks that are not going to like stop us from growing, but at the same time enable a lot of innovation in this space.
And that brings me to my next question. I want to talk to you about AI and how it is advancing within the continent, right? How does Google go around mitigating the risks that are attached to this trend and the concerns that, come about?
Look, everyone worries about the risk. Of course, we all should. And I think as Google, our position is to make sure that we have a bold but very responsible AI approach that, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is about together. How do we work together with academia, how to work together with government, how to work together with private entities to make sure that the frameworks are correct. But I think AI is such a powerful tool. When you think about us on the ground, we have 2 AI research centers that we've established, and this wasn't established yesterday. We've had an AI research center in Ghana, and they've been doing incredible work in terms of using AI to be able to mitigate some of the societal challenges we have, whether it's flood forecasting to be able to help people that are in riverine areas to protect themselves, whether it's food security, making sure that we be able to predict low-cost outbreaks, which can have a ravaging effect on farmers, whether it's on health. For instance, we're working with Jacaranda in Kenya to be able to mitigate. Maternal health is something that's really a crucial thing that we need to address on the continent. Every single day, up to 800 women die from the pregnancy-related issues that they have, which can be prevented if they had access to ultrasound early on the grade. So now we have a cost-effective way for them to do so. That's point of care, very cheap, very cost-effective. That's going to enable us to also mitigate some of those risks. So that's the work that we're doing in our AI research centers. But we've also now invested in a product development center in Kenya where we're building solutions for Africa, making sure that we have relevant data that we feed into our large language models that's going to enable us to make sure that Africa is not left out, and that there's sensitivities about Africa as we consider how we fast-track the advances that we can make from AI. So we're on the ground. The one way to make sure that we're not left out of this AI revolution is to be on the ground. It's not just about us being on the ground. It's about the partnership with government and also other private sector organizations making sure that they are also playing their part.
Alex, before I let you go, I just want to bring it back to digital transformation within the continent. I recently read that Google has invested about $1 billion in just advancing the transition within Africa. And this, of course, comes under the backdrop where we've seen a lot of internet outages within the continent. Would this be to address that in particular?
No, absolutely. I mean, for us, connectivity is job one, right? If you got to, first of all, provide people with access, right? And then you got to provide them with content so they don't want to use the access. So for us, we committed $1 billion for sure. We haven't spent all of it, but we spent quite a lot of it already. And part of that is we invested in what we call our Equiano undersea cable. Equiano is actually one of the things that's helping mitigate some of the outages that you see, because Equiano is, it's up and running, and a lot of traffic is going through it now to again help mitigate some of the outages that you're talking about. Now, investment in Equiano is going to create 2 million jobs, across Namibia, South Africa, Togo, Nigeria. So again, that's how we're investing in infrastructure. And then we're also really excited to have launched our first cloud region. Now, to be able to make AI work and really benefit from it, you need large language models, you need data, and you need real powerful computing power. And to be able to do that, you have to have a cloud-based approach to how you now process your data. To be able to launch a cloud region is exciting for us. We just launched it in South Africa, and it's going to help us service also the rest of Africa's needs as well in a lot of ways. So that's for me how we are investing, a lot of this money beyond all the other things that we're doing across YouTube and search and our product development center and our AI research centers. We're really, I'm really passionate about what we do because we're on the ground really putting our money where our mouth is in terms of driving Africa's growth.
I know I said that's the last question, but you mentioned South Africa, and I just want to touch on South Africa, your sentiment around South Africa, especially at this precarious time. We are seeing a number of international companies sort of pull out of South Africa in terms of investments. For example, we had BHP in the mining sector pitch a proposal to Anglo wanting to buy their assets, but they didn't want their South African assets. Just in your sentiment around South Africa, and if you are still keen to even invest more in that country.
Listen, our investment proposition, our investment proposition for South Africa is really strong. We have a big team in South Africa. As I mentioned now, building a cloud region requires a lot of investment. We just made that investment, and that's recent. And there's no way I see us pulling out of South Africa in any shape or form. So for me, we're very bullish about South Africa. South Africa is a critical component to Africa's growth. And it's not just because I love South Africa, but I'm married to South African. I just think that it's an amazing market that's really an incredible catalyst for where Africa needs to be. And I think, again, I don't know decisions that other companies make, but as Google, we're committed in the long run to South Africa.
That was the MD for Africa at Google, Alex Okosi.